The practice itself pushed one to learn and to expand one's clinical understanding and techniques. And I think that's an invaluable resource, and that ability to have growing curiosity in what you're doing and with each person helps for you to become a better practitioner in the long run.
I'm Michael Max, and this is Geological, the podcast that curates East Asian medicine and methods through the power of conversation. I find it challenging to sit in a non-reactive way with people with whom I disagree. It's hard at the dinner table when a heated conversation just might be what's in order, and it's difficult in the treatment room, where my opinion of my patient's beliefs shouldn't come into play in terms of how I treat someone. I have to remind myself to muster enough courtesy, grace, and self-restraint to listen to why someone values what they do that I don't, without disparaging or attacking what they value and why they value it. Over the course of years, I found that for the most part in clinic, I can lay aside my preferences, beliefs, and unresolved angst. This allows me to be more available to visiting my patient's world. It's like having a landing visa to a foreign country. I'm allowed in for a short stay that has a time limit. I've nothing to prove, no agenda other than to see if I can understand in a way that might be helpful. In my daily life, I am far less tolerant. I have opinions, and some of those opinions have teeth. I have values that go beyond attempting to understand. I've got turf to protect and a general tilt to the world that I would like to see unfold. It's much more difficult to have the self-restraint that allows the courtesy of seeking to first understand before attempting to sway, influence, or for that matter, fight. It's important to have values, boundaries, and the what it takes to back it all up. It's helpful to have the kind of visceral sense that lets you know you got skin in the game, and the game is for real. It's oh so easy to have my feathers ruffled, to feel the wrenching turn of my gut when I feel danger, to go looking for cover and the support of a community that has my back, or at least understands me in a way that feels connectively safe. The other day, I was talking to a guest of the podcast. She said that there are things that I sometimes say that make her bristle, that while she enjoys the conversations, there are also times when she disagrees. And I think this is important. She appreciates that I show up authentically, that we build a kind of trust by not being the same, and a foundation of goodwill that takes us through the choppy waters of disagreement. That respect, it allows for differences to coexist, that we can have the fullness of our expressions unfold without resorting to pulling the plug on connection, and that instead, we walk away with a more appreciative sense of the differences that might be fertile ground for deeper conversation. In clinic, I use my judgment to discern how I might be helpful to the person sitting across from me. I put aside if we are from warring tribes. That oneness of humanity that I like to believe in, on a good day, it shows up in clinic when I decide not to be reactive to how others believe me to be. It takes time to season ourselves into a practice. It requires learning methods and ways of working quite different from the basics that were taught in school. Learn enough different methods, and you'll see at times how things blend together in unexpected ways. Arnie Lade, our guest in this conversation, has been putting his hands on people since before he studied acupuncture. And afterwards, his attentiveness to touch and continued exploration of how the body moves, senses, and finds a more optimal balance has been a central theme in his work. Beyond the work of healing, he has also been involved with Zen. He's written a number of books, one that was a trustworthy traveling companion for me back in my early days of study. Arnie has lived a life of inquiry, and you'll find this conversation to be a tasty dim sum of healing work and the practice of practice. It's coming up right after this. We are grateful to the sponsors who support Geological. Here's a preview of solutions that our sponsors have for you. Golden Flower Chinese Herbs has a formula to take the achoo out of springtime. Over on the Shop Talk side of the house, we are featuring conversations on reproductive health. Later in the show, you'll hear why Jane is my favorite EMR with their extensive feature list and ability to customize to your unique clinic. And Blue Poppy has a great solution for seasonal allergies that you'll want to know about. Visit the sponsors page on the Geological website to take advantage of all the special offers our terrific sponsors have for the listeners of the podcast. Picture this, a backyard barbecue, spring moving into summer, the kind of day that smells like cut grass, honeysuckle, and someone's dad rocking the barbecue. Kids are running through the sprinklers, old friends are laughing about the past, someone's grandma's at the card table, absolutely dismantling everyone at gin rummy. She's merciless and having the time of her life, and then you sneeze several times in rapid succession. She doesn't even put her cards down. Jade Screen and Xanthium Formula. You blink. What? Jade Screen and Xanthium Formula for the sinuses. Golden Flower Chinese Herbs has it. She lays down her hand. Gin. Again. You're welcome. Golden Flower Chinese Herbs carries Jade Screen and Xanthium Formula and other prescriptions for seasonal allergies. This spring, you'll be back at that barbecue. Eyes clear, breathing easy, maybe even winning a hand or two. Probably not, though. Grandma's been doing this a lot longer than you. Golden Flower Chinese Herbs, where tradition meets care. Our Geological Shop Talk series on reproductive health continues this month with Stephen Cowan exploring growth not as a straight line, but as a spiral that circles back even as it carries us forward. In our discussion on the challenges of change in the teen years. And on the other side of the arc, Kath Berry joins us to talk about sexual vitality and health in the post-productive years. Visit the Geological website to watch these discussions or subscribe to Geological Shop Talk wherever you like to listen to your podcasts. Arnie Lade, welcome to Geological.
Thank you.
I was introduced to you through a friend of mine, Jean-Paul. Jean-Paul and I met in Taiwan years ago. We were both studying medicine, and it's funny. You meet people along the way, and then you meet other people. It's like stepping stones of relationships, how things unfold. How did you and JP know each other?
It started off many years ago. He was doing a martial arts sort of program, and I was invited to come to the program. This must have been the 1980s, and I gave a talk, and we met. He must have been in late teens, maybe 19 at the most, or 20. And we just connected, and we stayed in touch, and he went to acupuncture school, and we just stayed in touch over the years. And he took a number of courses after he graduated, like continuing education courses in craniosacral, visceral manipulation, adjacent fields to acupuncture that I was teaching at the time. Yeah. So we've known each other over, my gosh, must be close to 40 years or just under 35 at least.
Funny how fast that time can go. I
Yeah.
first met you, in a way, when I was in acupuncture school, mid-90s. Your book, Acupuncture Points, Images and Functions, was in our library. And while it was not the prescribed required reading, it was something that I would go to frequently because it was different than the other acupuncture books. I mean, at that point, Deadman wasn't even, I guess they were still working on it at that point. It was not published yet. We had the Shanghai comprehensive text from Eastland, which is amazing, but man, it's a heavy lift.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And your book, it was light, not light in that it didn't have substance. It was, and not simplified in the way that it was dumbed down, but a way of being accessible like useful information that was accessible. And I can remember going and spending time in the library just reading through it. And the funny thing is, I don't remember it giving me so much a sense of information as just a sense of familiarity with the points that came in a whole different way. I'm curious to know what launched you into doing that book. It's an old book, but still relevant.
And it's still available as an ebook. Unfortunately, the print book was discontinued a while ago, and by the publisher Eastland Press. So what got me interested in this was I was in China in 1985 at Chengdu University, and there I had some lectures by some teachers that explained the meaning of the points. And I was always fascinated. I remember hearing some about the meanings of the points, the translation of the names and the deeper meanings in Beijing in 1982. But then in Chengdu, I got a little bit deeper into the research of the points, and I was fascinated also at the same time between the etiology of the words, because at that time, learning in China, there was no numbering system. Still, the teachers did not have a numbering system.
Most you had to know the name.
You had to know the name, yeah.
You had to be on a first-name personal basis with those points.
Exactly, yes. And because the teachers didn't know the numbers were still pretty obscure to them. So in the clinic, it was all just the names that we referred to. So in that context, I became really quite fascinated. It actually took me a number of years to learn the point numbers after that. But I remember a teacher telling me that you don't need to know all the points, but you need to be intimate with the points that you know. And that's a big difference, like to really understand, it's not the volume of points, the number of points, but the intimacy that we could have with each point in knowing their functions, knowing how they can be combined with other points, knowing that their deeper significance, whether it's energetic, spiritual, symptomology, etc. So that became a real fascination for me. And then when I got home again to Victoria, where I live, there was a school that was founded, and I did a research paper on this and used it as my sort of master program. And there's a second part of the book that you might have used or not. It's called the repertory of points, where I cross-reference the points under blood stagnation and the key points for blood stagnation, or it might be wind or whatever that cross-referencing is. And I got that idea from my homeopathic studies much earlier in life when I was in massage therapy school back in the 70s, and I was studying homeopathy at the same time. And I thought that'd be cool to make a repertoire of the traditional functions for the points. And I think that kind of worked out well. And I have heard from many students that used my books, that was like something so useful for them in clinic to quickly look up like liver blood and which points were significant. And then they could choose from those points, maybe cross-referencing with other functions to isolate just maybe 1, 2, or 3 points that were completely appropriate to them.
Arnie, it sounds like that was a way that you became more intimate with the points by spending time with looking at the functions and looking at how things are similar or how they're different, how they're grouped. One of these is not like the other, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So for me, the images were the point names and how we translate them. And it gives you an image of the point that you can hold, an intimacy with the points. And the functions is more the practical application of that point. And both together just kind of clicked for me. And I remember the owner of Eastland Press, I mentioned to him, I was taking a workshop with Dan Bensky. You might have heard of him, of course. And he said, I heard from somebody else that you're writing a book. And I said, yeah, I just started it. And I was like probably only a quarter of the way through. And he said, what's it about? And I remember telling him, and he said, I'm coming up next weekend. to check out what you're doing. So he came the next weekend and flew up here and looked at the material that I had. And back in those days, we weren't writing on computers. I was doing it mainly all by hand, right? Just writing my notes and having all these stacks and putting it all together. And he said, I'm going to send you a contract in the following week. And it was one of those things that, had no idea about writing, but it was the beginning of my writing journey.
Mm-hmm.
Serendipitously, word of mouth, and they did a beautiful job with the book. And I love also the calligraphy. One of the owners' wives did the calligraphy for it. It's a beautiful Japanese, I think it's called big bucket style calligraphy. It's a form of calligraphy that's quite elegant, and it came together very nicely. And it's been, it was in print for almost 30 years, which is extraordinary. Yeah.
Isn't it strange? Maybe it's not strange. When I think about it, maybe it's not strange. It's curious how sometimes you start off on something. And why do you start off on it? Well, it's got your interest. And it just won't leave you alone. You have to do it. You're drawn to it. You work on it. You keep noodling away, or you just keep chipping away at something. You're not sure what it's going to be yet. And then something comes along like, Dan Bensky hearing about what you're doing and saying, "Ooh, I want to have a look," and then puts a contract out on you.
Yeah. Then you have to get serious and write the thing.
Well, yes, you do. You have to get serious when you've made a commitment. But I find it so just fascinating. I mean, my whole life in doing Chinese medicine and acupuncture has been one, I wonder what this is moment after another. This is curious. I don't understand this. I want to know more about this. And I begin digging. And then often resources just show up. It's weird.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a journey, isn't it? We're led by it.
We're led by it. And I would say, and again, this is one of the strange parts for me, there has reliably been help along the way, but I never know where it's going to come from. And I never know in what form it's going to take. Have you found that to be the case? Have you noticed things like that showing up for you?
Totally. One thing leads to another, and I never expected all the twists and turns of learning. And I've always been a curious person. I think that my biggest interest was in learning and keep on learning. And I think that quality of wanting to learn has served me well. And I guess that's the natural curiosity. And if we have that, then we're led to the right direction. Yeah, from one exploration to another. Like for example, my interest in Ayurveda got piqued by meeting my co-author of one of my other books called Tao and Dharma, Chinese Medicine and Ayurveda, Dr. Robert Svoboda. And he just came to Victoria and he was teaching something. I had already been studying a little bit of acupuncture. I was apprenticing, and he came along, and I started seeing the similarities between that system of medicine and Chinese medicine, and it piqued the curiosity. Like, oh, I need to know more. I like to delve into this a little bit deeper and find out what resources that are in that I could apply to Chinese medicine. And for me, that's how my knowledge base and my practice grew through continual exploration of different pathways. I guess some people are satisfied with just learning one thing. But when I started, you kind of had to be a generalist. There wasn't, in practice, I saw a little bit of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe today it's a little bit different where young people coming into the practice are specializing. But back in the 80s, there wasn't too many practitioners around. There was no schools in Canada and very few practitioners. And most people apprenticed, so they learned hands-on. And then they went mostly to China to study through the World Health Organization and programs. But essentially, the people that the patients that came were such a variety, from children to seniors and everything in between, all different types of problems and diseases. So there was, I guess, the practice itself pushed one to learn and to expand one's clinical understanding and techniques, and I think that's a invaluable resource, and that ability to have growing curiosity in what you're doing and with each person helps for you to become a better practitioner in the long run.
This episode is brought to you by Jane, a practice management software and EMR designed to help practitioners run their business without running around. Managing a practice can mean juggling more tools than you ever planned to. One for booking, one for documentation, another for billing. Each solves a small part of the puzzle, but because they don't work together, the manual admin still adds up. Jane helps practitioners connect their core tools all in one place. Payments are taken and recorded directly into Jane. Jane Websites helps new patients find your clinic online, and if something needs attention, Jane's support team is available by phone, email, or chat with an understanding of how your entire system works together. For added peace of mind, Jane includes privacy and security features like two-step verification, role-based access levels, and HIPAA and PPDA compliance, so you can feel confident your practice and patients' data are protected. To learn more about how Jane can support you, your patients, and your business, head to jane.app/demo. And if you're ready to get started, you can use the code CHEOLOGICAL for a 1-month grace period on your new Jane account. I suspect it does. Of course, the more experience we get and the more that we're engaged in the learning, I think the more we learn, the more we can learn, the more we're open to it. Certainly, when you were starting out in the 80s, the idea of specialization, like the idea of having a job doing acupuncture, there just were no jobs. That was a ludicrous idea. Many people specialize because they feel like they have to. And I think a lot of schools give the message. Maybe the marketplace gives the message these days. I don't know. Someone asked me the other day what I specialize in. And I said, well, I specialize in not specializing.
Yeah.
I've got a kind of a mind and outlook. I think I have a high need for novelty. Maybe that's a piece of it. If I had to do the same thing and see basically similar sorts of cases day in, day out, I'd have to close my clinic and go to work at Lowe's or something. It just wouldn't work for me. Well, one of the wonderful things about the practice of acupuncture, if you want to specialize, you can certainly do that. If you want to take it far and wide, and it sounds like you've used all kinds of other adjacent or ancillary methods along with acupuncture. You've done the Ayurvedic. I've looked at your website. It looks like you've done some Feldenkrais work as well.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I did the professional training in Feldenkrais. And that was one of the biggest expansion of learning through that phase of my practice. That was in the late 1990s. I think I graduated 2001. 25 years ago. And that really put a new slant on what I was doing in acupuncture. Acupuncture was my core practice, and all the different parts and all the different trainings and what I had before I came into acupuncture just enhanced the practice. It didn't narrow the practice, but it enhanced the practice. And for me, that was just a part of who I am. Some people, I understand, just want to stay focused on one thing and they don't want to learn anything else. And I guess I had that natural curiosity where I did want to bring together different modalities. So for me, my own journey started off as in something called polarity therapy in the 1970s. And then went through massage therapy, college in Toronto, came back out west and got licensed out here. And I started practicing eventually in an acupuncture clinic in 1980 with a couple of doctors that had studied with Worsley in England in 5-element acupuncture. So I was exposed to that. And one of the doctors had just come back from China, and they opened up in 1980, at the end of 1980, opened up the International Acupuncture Program in Beijing, Nanjing, and Shanghai. And he was going to go to China, and I was apprenticing. So I said, I'll go and study in China through the World Health Organization, because there was no alternative at the time. And
That
it was
was
a
the open door.
fantastic yeah, and it was a fantastic opportunity, and it kind of accelerated me into practicing. And then coming back and practicing, it kind of for a couple of years, I did a little bit of everything: my massage therapy, some hands-on, the acupuncture, and then after a few years, I gave all my hands-on um, patients to my wife, who was also a therapist, and then I just concentrated on acupuncture. And then later on, this is a kind of interesting. In '85, I was in Chengdu again, doing some postgraduate studies, and I heard about this practitioner, this osteopath that had just kind of gone through Chengdu, and he was teaching. And this was Dan Bensky, and he was the
In
acupuncturist.
1985.
1985, and he said, "Oh, he's from Seattle." My teacher said, which was right across the water from me. I said, "Oh,
Right.
That's really interesting." And he was teaching something that was very esoteric to the Chinese, which was craniosacral. They never heard of that, and I had just bought a book, like a year before, Eastland Press book on craniosacral. And I was totally fascinated because I had some exposure to it through polarity therapy. And so I knew what they were talking about, but you needed hands-on practice. And all my teachers in China encouraged me to go see Dan Bensky and learn about this thing that they were so puzzled about, but they knew that I was interested. So when I got back, I contacted him, and then for a few years, I did a number of programs with Dan through the school where he was teaching in Seattle, and started integrating different aspects right into my acupuncture program. So instead of having a theoretical model of qi and all of that, I was starting to be able to experience and see, like hands-on, feeling what the qi is, taking it from a conceptual level to a very practical hands-on level. And I think so much, back in the 80s, I think it was still acupuncture, and for many ways was more of a vocation or a training. It wasn't so as much intellectual as it tends to be today. It was a much more practical tutorial type training, where it's about the intimacy of what you're doing with hands-on with people, and the intimacy of the knowledge of the points, and not so highly theoretical based. I don't know how to explain that. But I think for a lot of people that struggled with acupuncture, learning it, had to almost deprogram themselves from their Western cognitive sciences a little bit, which was hard for them.
It's challenging for those of us who like to use our minds. Some of us prefer thinking to feeling, right? There's different kinds of personality types. So there's that, and whatever training we have and whatever, we think is right and all that. I mean, it's medicine, for God's sake. You better be evidence-based.
Yeah.
It's medicine. I wonder what's actually going on here. And actually invite all of your senses in and bring that to bear. Dan's work, it's evolved into engaging vitality.
Right. Yeah.
Which is, I went to that school in Seattle in the mid-90s. And so one of my first introductions to doing acupuncture was, put your hands on this person and see what you feel.
Yeah.
Well, what am I supposed to feel? Just put your hands on and see what you feel.
Right.
How do I know? Well, there's a good question. How do you know what you feel? The mind can so easily come in with trying to make sense. This, I think, has been one of the big challenges for me in practicing, is to, for a moment, Not forever, but at least for a moment. Just let the thinking mind go and sense. Just sense for a moment. See what's there.
Yeah. 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 And the more you can experience, more one experiences, the greater confidence you have, I think, in clinical practice. The greater experiences that you have with feeling and sensing and knowing, whether it's the points, the meridians, the organs, etc. One of the great revelations to me that came along somewhere along the line, I've seen it a number of times, where we have what we call spontaneous meridian manifestation, where the meridians appear visually in a person after needling. And that was like, wow, you could not only feel it, but you can see the meridians manifest. One of the first times that happened was with a patient that was paralyzed, and they were paralyzed from about the waist down. They were in a severe car accident. And I treated them using a spleen 6, and we know that spleen 6 is a crossing point of the yin meridians. All of a sudden, that was one of the first points I used on him. The 3 yin meridians all became red on his leg and went right up into his trunk. And you could see and feel clearly, visually, the meridians manifest themselves. And I've had that experience with other patients. It's a rare phenomenon. It probably only happens 1 in 10,000 times. But if you practice long enough, you might run into it. And it's like, this is real. This isn't a theoretical model. When you can feel it, see it, touch it, and that there's something going on that's quite physical, but we still have difficulty explaining it.
It is hard to explain to the Western mind. There is that. And look, there's a great place for the Western mind. There's amazing things our science has done. I mean, look, we're having a conversation because of Western minds, creating things like internets and microphones and cameras and, computer chips. It's phenomenal what it can do, but there's this other side of life as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that between the Western, or maybe we'd call it the rational, that part that wants to know what we're doing, and the intuitive, that maybe we can sense what is happening, but we can't really necessarily explain it. And I think in practice, the longer we practice, I think that this one thing that I found in my own practice over the years, that I had to, know what I'm doing became less important. I didn't have to think as much in the practice itself. Things started to come very naturally, and there was a level of being and acting that was not necessarily. I had to, if I wanted to explain it, for example, to a student what I was doing, I'd have to slow really quite down a lot and try to figure out what I was doing to be able to explain it. But the explanation was never 100% of what I could really share with another person. And maybe the student found it hard to, by rational explanation, you don't get the whole picture. It's by doing and learning and practicing that you start getting a whole other level of awareness of
My
what's
friend
going on.
Brenda Hood, another Canadian, one of your fellow Canadians, she spent quite a bit of time in China and used to teach at some of the schools. I forget which ones, but in conversations I've had with her, she's funny. She likes to remind me and say, well, Chinese medicine isn't completely rational.
That's right, yeah.
Which isn't to say we don't take it very seriously. Just because it's not rational doesn't mean you don't take it seriously. There's other things. I'm curious, Arnie, to know how the Feldenkrais work has come in and informed what you do.
Yeah. Well, it's a different way of seeing So that's number one. It's a different way of seeing people. And how, that's a big question. Wow. There's so many different ways of answering this question. But I'll start with this, that first of all, it's seeing people for their totality and for their functionality. And the functionality, what I mean by that is how the body, so how we move, for example, is a reflection of our totality of ourselves. That everybody has a specific way of moving, of orienting themselves in space, and of acting, and that is an expression of their totality. So by looking at that, you can see it's like a training of where people are restricted, blocked, where the chi is blocked, where things aren't moving through. So first of all, it's a way of noticing these things, that it's like a highly, I guess, trained way of looking at it. And I think in the Nanjing, it's one of the highest levels of diagnosis is by seeing alone.
Right, looking and knowing.
Looking and knowing. So it's a training in looking and knowing. And looking and knowing could be for Feldenkrais was through the physical organization. Maybe there's more in Chinese medicine in looking and knowing than in Feldenkrais. It could probably be referring also to the colors and the aura, whatever you want to call it, that's around the body, the colors of the skin. But certainly the movement pattern is expressed by the body, and that movement pattern shows all the restrictions of chi flow in the body. So that's one way that Feldenkrais the method was really informative for me, and learning to feel through the skeleton, through handling people, through touching people, a whole different level of where the restrictions were in people. And often those restrictions, and Chinese medicine says this too, I think our most common places are the joints. If we look at physical restrictions, it's in the joints themselves that these restrictions occur most frequently. And it's just a different way of awareness. And also the whole methodology of Feldenkrais is learning through learning. It's learning by doing, learning through learning, that we fundamentally gain more and more knowledge and wisdom. So there's learning by theory, but there's learning by doing, by learning itself. And this is a way where you really learn. Plus also, the big thing for me personally in doing the Feldenkrais work was the inner transformation of removing my own blockages so that I had greater sensitivity to other people. So, if you ask, it's hard to feel if you're blocked yourself. It's hard to become clear in like pulse taking, for example. If your body is stiff, your sensitivity is diminished. If your awareness is restricted, and you're not able to sense. So the clearer that I can become in myself, the more beneficial it is. And certainly some people could use Qigong, yoga, Tai Chi to start opening themselves up so that those restrictions start diminishing in them and they become more of an empty vessel for feeling, sensing. And Feldenkrais is a method like that. It's a method of, first of all, when you work on yourself, is to unlearn all the behavioral patterns that are no longer effective for you. So somehow we get layers and layers of restrictions in life, from how we learn to walk, how we learn to ride a bicycle, from accidents that we had, from injuries that we've had. And those layers of restrictions inhibit our awareness. And so that's why Feldenkrais called it awareness through movement, because he was trying to promote awareness essentially. And the other key thing that I think that we could learn from Feldenkrais, that that he said that thinking, feeling, sensing, and moving are all integrated in one all the time, that we can't separate any of these functions out from each other, that every little aspect is related to the other one. In other words, thinking has a certain feeling quality, has a sensory quality, and a movement quality. Just like closing your eyes and thinking about turning your head right, there's already the nervous system will immediately move the eyes, will move unless you're paralyzed or something, your body is already engaged in that process just by having that thought. And there's a sensory tone to it, a feeling tone to it. So, and I would say that movement, that qi, one of the greatest aspects of qi is movement. So we can say that qi is, in the Chinese perspective, is part of that expression. And I think this goes along with the Chinese saying, that the mind leads the qi and the qi leads the blood. So as we clarify this process inside of ourselves, and we can become more sensitive, and we can help other people to become more sensitive, and we can feel where their restrictions are, and we could utilize it in our own practice. So for me, it was a method of becoming much more of a refined practitioner. Yeah.
Yes, doing the internal work.
Yeah.
Kind of a qigong. You could say it's a kind of qigong. So maybe a Western flavor, in a sense.
A Western flavor, and he was a scientist. He was a physicist, so he was really trying to put it into a Western idea. Although, he himself was a judo master and helped bring judo to Europe back in the 1930s, 1940s. So he did bring that Eastern martial arts philosophy with his scientific knowledge and try to put it into a vocabulary that speaks to Westerners at the time.
He didn't. I've heard stories about him. I mean, he's one of these sort of enigmatic. So how do you pronounce it?
Yeah,
he's one of these interesting characters.
Yes.
Yeah, he was born in Kiev, but he found his way to Palestine as a young boy.
That's right. Yeah, and I think it was the Russian Empire, and I believe it was a small town in the Ukraine, or maybe it was White Russia. Anyways, he did walk from. There was all sorts of, during the Russian Revolution, all sorts of purges around that time against Jewish communities, and a lot of people had to flee. And there was at the same time a movement towards people going to the Promised Land, Jerusalem, the Palestinian states, and migrating there to settle. And he was one of those people that walked across Europe and led some kids, apparently, some other people, to Palestine.
Are you sneezing? Is your nose running? Are you feeling stuffed up? Spring is here, and for many of us, so are seasonal allergies. This is the time of year when patients need support they can count on. At Blue Poppy, they're here to help you stay one step ahead. Introducing Aller-Ease, a trusted formula designed to address sneezing and the runny, stuffy nose of spring allergies. Based on the classic Biqiu Tang and refined for modern clinical use, Aller-Ease is crafted to deliver consistent, reliable results, so your patients can breathe easier and you can treat with confidence. Because when your formulas are dependable, your focus stays where it belongs, on your patients. Make this spring a healthier one for you and for them. Stock up on Aller-Ease today. Blue Poppy, trusted by practitioners since 1982. Walked across Europe. I think about the incredible technologies we have for transportation these days. We can easily go almost anywhere in the world. It's quite something to think about walking.
Yeah.
Walking for your life away from one place that's deadly toward you, toward something that might be. That's really quite incredible. Now, this, you mentioned something a little bit earlier about doing the awareness through movement work, studying the Feldenkrais, discovering your restrictions, and you use the word unlearning as a way of resolving these. Earlier, we were talking about the learning process at the beginning of this conversation, and natural inclination I think both of us have toward learning. There's a thirst there. I've noticed over the years, and this isn't just within me physically, but sometimes to learn something new, there are things that I really need to unlearn or let go of or put to the side or maybe retire or maybe just set over to the side so that I can get a hold of something new. I'm curious to get your perspective on unlearning, because it seems like a key element in being able to move forward.
Yes, and I think it goes to, I believe it was either Lao Tzu or Chuang Tzu said about in the way of the Tao, every day is a day of unlearning. That in the world...
Whoa, that gives me shivers just hearing you say it.
Yeah, it's like saying in a way, I don't know, and going with the flow. I don't know there's a part of me that doesn't know, but I know when I'm in the flow. So the unlearning in the Feldenkrais method is in the sense of unlearning behaviors, ways of doing things that are no longer useful, letting them go. And letting different possibilities arise and it's through the process of being aware of the changes when we experience something new and allowing that to be integrated into the system. The unlearning is a process of shedding different layers of habits, habits that aren't useful anymore. So all of us have very useful habits. Habits are a good thing. But I would say that most of us also have habits that are not so useful, that inhibit us, that restrict us, that keep us from expanding our understanding and awareness. Just like we have maybe prejudices, opinions, those type of things that keep us from seeing the picture holistically. In practice, in clinical practice, I would say that we learn to have models in Chinese medicine, many different types of models, 5-element model. We could have models of the Zongfu organs. We could have the meridian model. There's so many different models that we can use. But sometimes those models can become restrictions for us. And by having the internal flexibility of saying, well, I don't really know what's going on here, becoming curious about that and getting more awareness, bringing our awareness into that, we can let go of our thinking and trying to put it into some kind of a model, and maybe it doesn't fit. The person doesn't fit any model. So what do we do then?
Right.
And I think this is a problem in Western medicine.
Oh, wait, where's the drawing board?
Right. And this is a problem, whether it's in mental health, getting a diagnosis. We're all on a spectrum of something, but we can't pigeonhole ourselves neatly into all these little categories, that we're all very unique. So there's a different way of the unlearning gives us the possibility, I would say, of seeing the way things are, just the way they are. And that is the realm of, in a practice, using one's intuition, using one's experience, using the parts of us that are open to something greater than the model. So we just have an open-hearted connection with our client, and the next right thing becomes apparent. And the longer I practice, the more I realize that this is probably the most authentic way of practicing Chinese medicine and connecting. And if a model fit the person, great, I can use that. But I'm open to what is the appropriate thing in the moment. And that requires a sense of not being rigid, being the possibility of open-ended knowledge and not a closed knowledge. Yeah. I don't know if that makes sense. Does it make sense, Michael, in your
It makes
experience?
sense. It does. I've had moments where I don't know what it is. I'm a bit more flexible. It might be the way the weather is. It could be the height of the tide, the phase of the moon. I don't know. I slept well. Who knows what it is? There's moments where I go into the clinic and I don't really know what's going on with somebody, and that's not a problem to solve. It's kind of a curiosity to explore. There's other days where I don't know what to do with the person, and it's a big problem because I'm supposed to do something. As a practitioner, the tacit agreement of medicine is they have a problem. My job is to help them with their problem. And, I want to hold up my end of the bargain. And again, there's days where I can just kind of feel my way through it and notice the right next thing. There's other days where I've got a model for this, and I think this model is going to fit them, and it turns out it does. And then there's other days where I'm just flummoxed. And again, on a good day, it will allow me to reorient. On a not so good day, I have to figure out something that will hopefully be helpful and not be harmful, because I'm just not in that. I'm just not riding that flow. There's days where it's just like that. And you just have to chalk it up as, part of the way it goes. And this is part of the learning. And maybe sometimes it's part of the unlearning. Like I think I have to use one of these models. Well, what else might be here? It's what keeps the work endlessly fascinating for me. I went to a high school reunion some months back, and people asked me if I'm retired. And at first I was saying to people, retired, I'm just starting to get the hang of this. And then people gave me an extremely quizzical look, like, what the hell is wrong with you? You've been at it how many years? You're just getting the hang of it? But yeah, that's it. I feel like I'm just getting the hang of it sometimes. And there really is something there, Arnie, with that being open to sensing and not knowing.
Yeah.
Sometimes things just show up. My hand will go to a point. I'll go check the pulse. The pulse is completely different. Like it's not skipping anymore.
Yeah.
And it doesn't happen all the time. I'm no great practitioner. I feel like I'm kind of a solid journeyman at this point. But sometimes something happens. And I do think, since we're talking about learning and unlearning, as we're having this conversation in the moment, I think sometimes in a moment of unlearning, there's like an extra potency. Something happens to attention, at least to my attention. And it's possible to notice something. That might be, I'm going to watch for that. That might be like a little signal, potent moment, unlearning moment to learn something.
Yeah, it's paying attention to the unexpected that arises, and those moments, those moments of, we all recognize the moments of learning when we learn something new and it replaces something that we maybe previously thought to be true. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a very vivid memory of one of those. I had a teacher in acupuncture school. She was from Chengdu, actually. And lovely. We all loved her. And she taught us a lot of acupuncture, and it was wonderful. And I had very fond feelings for her. And so I'd always remember, like, not always, but like for a long time, I'd be working in clinic and I was doing like a bunch of yin points, and I'd hear her voice in the back of my head saying, don't forget to use a yang point. You have to use a yang point if you're going to use a lot of yin points. And that was always there. That was a scaffolding that she gave me, Arnie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Until the day when I had all these yin points in and I heard her voice and I checked everything that I'm working on, and it was like, not today. No yang point today. Thank you for the scaffolding. Thank you for the rubric. Thank you for something that got me to here, but not in this case.
Lovely. Very nice.
Now, in addition to your acupuncture work, in addition to your writings on acupuncture and such, you've also got a Zen book out recently.
That's right.
And because it feels like we've been talking Zen in a way, this just not knowing.
That's right. Yeah, very good. Yeah, Zen is, there's a big part of not knowing, being comfortable with not knowing, getting comfortable, getting intimate with not knowing.
Mm.
And yeah, I recently, just last year, I put out a book called Zen and the Mystic Impulse by Lotus Press. And it's about my reflections on the teachings of my teacher. His name was Willigus Jaeger. He died in 2020, so 6 years ago, right before COVID hit. And at the same time, it was my older brother died, and COVID happened. You know, the whole world went into lockdown, and it was funny because for us too, we were just moving our office that month when
Oh my goodness.
when the office all of a sudden everything stopped. The world stopped for a few months. And after maybe half a year, I started thinking, how can I honor my teacher? This fellow, Willigus Jaeger was his name. He was a Benedictine monk and a Zen master who lived in
Oh my
Japan
goodness.
and studied for about 7 years in Japan. And he had a Zen teacher there. And Willigus was a very unique person in the sense that he was a Christian, he was a Benedictine monk and a priest, and also he was a Zen master. And he was recognized in China by the Bailin Temple in the Chan Buddhist tradition, the tradition of Zen in China. So he was a unique personality, and he integrated all of that into his own teaching. So all his books in English had become out of print over the last number of years. He only had maybe 3 or 4 books published in English, and he wrote over 20 books in German. And he was a great influence to me, and I learned so much about him. I had this idea that I could put some of his teachings down and express them through my own experience and understanding too. And that's what I did. And it's been selling quite nicely, and a lot of people have been reading it, and I've been enjoying the feedback and the help that this book has been giving other people. And a lot
It's,
of
go ahead.
it relates to just life, right? Yeah. And some of the chapters are right about aging too, and all the questions that we have as in place.
Yes, we do. And you mentioned before we started rolling some tape, you mentioned that you have retired in the past bit of time.
That's right. A year ago, I retired about a year ago now from practice. My practice had been starting to slow down. I guess since COVID, I started going to 3 days a week and then 2 days a week after a couple of years, and then 1 day a week for the last couple of years, the last 2 years of my practice. And just my own health challenges, as well as I think as I'm aging too, there's an important time to reflect on my own life and to cultivate my own inner spiritual practice. And for me, especially and those health issues started coming up where I recognized that it's good to just let it go. The biggest thing I miss about the practice is the people. And for me, the people were always the big thing. And helping people, just connecting with people, I miss that part. But it does require a certain amount of energy to be in practice.
It does.
Yeah.
It really does.
Yeah. And for me, I needed to conserve that energy for my own health. But I do miss the people. Yeah.
I get that. You know, when I first started practicing Chinese medicine, maybe you had a similar thought too. It's like, oh, this is cool. And there's these great practitioners that are in their 90s and they practice forever. And, oh, I'm a Chinese medicine practitioner. I should do this until the day I die. It's part of the deal. Not necessarily. Here's another fallacy that I had when I was younger. Oh, I practice this amazing medicine that is restorative and it has this yang sheng aspect. It can take care of me. I'm going to get a pass on ill health as I get older. Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things, I think, in our trade that maybe doesn't get talked about so much. I can remember a famous doctor when I was in Taiwan who passed away. And, there's always stories about, what actually happened. They said he died of a heart attack, but he actually died of cancer, supposedly. But they couldn't let out that he died of cancer because that would ruin his reputation and, ruin the clinic that he left behind with people that he trained.
That's kind of sad, isn't it? Where we have this concept of how it should be, in the quotations marks, and not the reality how it is. There's a lovely Zen story about these two monks sitting, and they're older, right? And the one monk says to the other, "So how is it for you now?" And the other monk says, "When the golden wind blows, the leaves fall." So the story, essentially, the golden wind is the older years. It's natural that the leaves fall and life comes to an end and things fall away. Whether it's an ill, we're all subject to ill health. Put it that way. I used to joke with people saying that everybody wants to die healthy. But not too many people ever do. Something will come. Everybody has this fantasy. I just like to die in bed, and, that's it on a healthy night, not ever have any problems. But I think this is a great illusion that is probably not good to hold on to, because most people, the vast majority, will find that things will start falling apart, whether it's cancer, heart, kidneys, or whatever, dementia, all the nervous system problems that have arisen so much the last 30 years. Yeah. It's just a part of life. And I think the acceptance of that makes suffering a lot less. Just to have the acceptance that things happen to us, and this is all a part of the natural flow of the leaves falling from the trees. This is what for me, Chinese medicine, the great Tao, the way things are. You read Chuang Tzu, he talks about that too. But how no one's going to reverse nature here, but just to go along with it, not to fight nature, is a lot easier, a lot more peaceful than to try to swim upriver against the forces of nature and what this the natural occurrence of this body, aging, getting ill, dying. Yeah.
I'm thinking about unlearning again, and all these fantastic opportunities to unlearn something about life, to see what life actually is.
Yeah. And our own illness can give us, as a practitioners, can give us a lot of compassion to other people's suffering. And that illness doesn't mean that there's something terribly wrong either. Illness is a learning opportunity for us, so that we can become, the way I like to look at it, kinder, more gentle human beings, kinder with ourselves, kinder with each other, have greater compassion. Yeah, that yes, suffering is just the way things are on this planet. Not that we have to suffer all the time, but it's part of it. Yeah.
It's a big piece of the curriculum.
Yeah. Yeah. Joy can be there,
yeah, sure.
all the other things too, but somewhere along the line we're going to encounter suffering.
Well, and what you just said about also finding kindness for ourselves as a way of being able to have more kindness for others. I don't know about you, and I don't know about all y'all out there listening right now, but kindness toward myself, I am a harsh taskmaster. And as we're having this conversation, I'm realizing I'm kind of a harsh taskmaster to myself, but I like to think I'm kind to other people. Maybe I need to revisit that a little bit.
Yeah, we go learn kindness to ourselves. It's a good lesson that I learned throughout my life. be gentle with myself, and it can still be a struggle. Sometimes I don't like the way the day is unfolding, but yeah, it's good to have those great moments of acceptance of just the way things are. Not how I like them to be, but the way things are. And that can make the moments flow a lot easier instead of digging in my heels and resisting life. Yeah.
Well, I think that's probably a good place to put a pin in it for today.
It's been nice talking to you, Michael. We've had a wide-ranging conversation on all sorts of subjects.
We have, this Chinese medicine stuff. I think it opens us up. I know it's opened me up to being way more inquisitive about the world, and especially inquisitive of how other people step into this stream of practice with all its different methods, with all its different principles, with all, the treasure trove and curiosity that goes with it, and hearing how people engage with this. It's so the opposite of a standard. In our modern world, we're very keen on standards. And look, there's places where you want a standard. If you're going to the hardware store to buy some bolts to bolt something together, you want to know that 3/8 is 3/8.
Right.
But when it comes to something like Chinese medicine, it's a different kettle of fish.
Yeah. Maybe because we're dealing with people and there's no standard person.
Maybe because we're dealing with people and there's no standard person. Amen, brother.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for the time today. This has been a delight.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the conversation. Really enjoyed it.
Arnie and I covered a lot today, and I keep coming back to the idea that it's not the number of things you know, it's the intimacy you have with what you're using. I've seen this play out in the practice of medicine and in other aspects of life as well. Arnie talked about studying in China when you had to know the point names, because point names as numbers, it made no sense. I found that when you know the point by name, you're not just locating it. You're having a relationship with it. You know something of its character and its function. You have clues for how to pair it with other points. It's the intimacy of being on a first-name basis. And I love that part about how learning also requires unlearning, and how new ideas don't stand on their own. They have to be able to fit adjacently into what you already know. For years now, I've had a passing interest in the work of Moshe Feldenkrais. I seem to have had some kind of eccentric orbit around that work, and coming back to Feldenkrais's work, movement patterns as the body's autobiography, how experiences become embodied in tissue and then expressed in movement. Somehow, this time around, it lands more solidly for me. And that book we discussed on the body and mature behavior, it's another look at that elusive thing that we call the body-mind. Because it's languaged from 80-ish years ago by someone who didn't have English as a first language, I found that it has a flavor and perspective that has me feeling the ideas in it more than thinking about them. Finally, and as I age, I deeply appreciated that part of the conversation on what happens when we get older. If we're lucky enough to grow old, we also face the realities of decline. Practicing East Asian medicine, it doesn't give us a pass, but it maybe gives us a way to be kinder and more accepting of what's coming. So here's what I'm sitting with. Where in your practice are you trying to, air quotes here, know your way forward? And where in your practice are you feeling your way into the next phase?